Stocks, bonds, ETFs, straight out of downtown Chicago. This is Zach's Market Edge.
Welcome to Zach's Market Edge, the podcast about investing in your life. I'm your host, Tracy Reinick, and this week I'm joined by one of Zach's summer interns in what has become a tradition here at Zach's. I always try to have our summer interns on the podcast. So this podcast, I'm joined by one of our interns, Chris Vargas, who's going to give us insights on what's happening with the Millennials. I know last summer I commented that the summer intern podcast that I have now been doing every year, that would be like the last one with a millennial on the podcast, because basically we're getting into Gen Z now. If the people are in college, they're mostly Gen Zs, but Chris and I were discussing this before we came on to the podcast about whether or not he was a millennial or a Gen Z, because Chris, you are out of college now.
Yeah, I just graduated in just May, so this past couple months ago.
Okay,
yeah.
And that was from what school?
From Loyola University, Chicago.
Okay, here in Chicago. Mm-hmm. I always like to get the plugs in for the schools on here. But so you're already out. So then we were debating if that made you a Gen Z or the Millennials. And I think we basically decided that you are among the youngest.
Yeah, right in the cusp.
You're right on the edge. Depend on who is discussing the cutoff.
Exactly, defining who's defining. Yeah.
But I found that kind of interesting because we've had some of the older millennials on here, plus some of my regular guests are millennials who work here at Zach's. And it's a little bit different perspective, I feel, going from the youngest of a generation, but that's true of any generation, versus the oldest. Now, the oldest of the millennials are like 39, I think, almost 40. So that's a big difference. Also, just based on your background of where you've been when you went into college, what was happening with the economy, with the stock market, all of these things obviously influences every generation, like when they get out. I know for me, being Generation X here, we graduated when into a recession. It wasn't the Great Recession, but it was the early 90s recession. And so that was a little bit challenging for me and my friends and did influence kind of where our careers went. And then you had some people graduating into, those would be the oldest millennials, maybe actually, into the dot-com recession.
In the early 2000s.
Yeah. And then obviously the millennials who were getting out right as the Great Recession hit would have, a lot of scars, I feel, from that one. But you should not. So that's kind of what I like to talk about on these podcasts that I do with you guys, is kind of what's going on in the college scene with investing and finance. Are college students or younger people buying stocks in general? So I think I asked you when we were just discussing, like, do you buy stocks on the side? Not all of our interns are buying stocks, by the way.
Yeah. No, I mean, I personally speaking, I haven't bought any stocks yet.
Okay.
But that would definitely be something I would want to, especially now after all I've learned these couple of months.
Yeah.
Would definitely want to get into in the near future, I'd say. And but like,
do any of your friends buy?
Yeah, as my friends, other than like a couple that I knew when we were in high school, that would get bonds for presents and stuff like that.
Okay.
And then the biggest question I have now, especially when I was telling people what I was doing for the summer, was, oh, well, how do you feel about cryptocurrencies and like Bitcoin? So that's because it's like what you hear all over on social media. Everyone's talking about Bitcoin, whether it be in a good spotlight or in a bad one.
Do any of your friends own that? Ethereum.
I knew a couple kids, junior and senior year, that did own a decent amount of cryptocurrency, and I think it was Bitcoin. Yeah.
Wow. Were they mining too? Were they like plugging in all over?
I think so. I can think of especially one that was really, really into it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Do you know what happened when it plunged down? Did they stay in it, or?
I mean, they haven't been posting about it as much anymore.
Right.
So they want to, they'll show off their gains but not their losses.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Yeah. Does anyone talk about gold at all?
No.
I wouldn't think so. No. Just kind of wondering where that stands. Yeah. What about, so if they are thinking about buying stocks or just like what's going on with that, that's mainly done by the apps, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know a couple of years ago when I first was asking the interns that question, the apps were kind of newer then, the Robinhood and the Acorn. I feel like we don't even need to really cover that stuff now because it would be like, of course, Tracy, they're all on the app. Like it's not even a question anymore, right? Okay. So yes, if they were buying stocks, they would be on the app and all that. Does anyone talk about the stock market? Like, even if they're not buying anything, is it ever like mentioned?
I mean, if something's like a headline, they'll maybe mention it here or there. Like, oh, did you hear what happened with Uber or stuff like that? Or, like things that people use every day, like Uber, Lyft, Apple, obviously.
Was anyone interested in those IPOs at all? Was there any talk of like, hey, I use Uber all the time, I'm going to go buy that IPO? No.
Not that I can remember. But one thing that people were talking about, especially since, like there's a lot of like more health conscious people, was Beyond Meat. They were actually, like I heard a couple of people talk about that. Yeah.
Okay. That would be interesting. Yeah, any of that kind of wellness. What about the pot stocks? Nobody's talking about those? No.
No, not really, no.
So they're not looking for ways to like make money on these.
I mean, yeah,
other than the cryptos.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, so some people like that I see like on social media will eventually they'll like talk about like some like big returns that are possible for like the pot stocks and marijuana and stuff like that.
Okay.
But yeah.
What about social media? Are there still particular platforms that are like the one you should all be on? Is it still Instagram? And
yeah, it's definitely right now. Like the most prominent one, I'd say it's definitely Instagram.
Okay.
And second, I'd say Twitter, just because like like a lot of stuff goes down there, and it's like really just turning into just a huge news outlet for like all ages, really. Even it's not even just for like younger people like me. It's like it's really crossed like a lot of boundaries.
So you really go on Twitter to get information.
Yeah,
more so.
Especially like especially with me personally. Like I love sports, so when something happens and I don't know the details about it, I just go refresh my page and see what's going on.
Okay, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Speaking of sports, what about eSports, like the gaming type of sports and all of that? Are any of your friends into that? I mean, are they like specifically buying like certain, like a Microsoft computer or like the Xbox? Are they actively waiting for all these new gaming things?
I mean, me personally, I kind of got over my gaming phase in high school.
Okay.
But the people I know, like I do have younger brothers that are very into they're in that age. Right now, like I know that console sales are really down right now just because the next generation's coming out within a year, maybe a year and a half.
Yeah, everybody's waiting.
So no one's going to buy these, So GameStop obviously had a really, really bad quarter this past quarter. They had to get rid of their dividend and stuff like that.
It was not good.
Yeah, it's not. And even like now, like there's right by my apartment, there's a GameStop and it's just a ghost town in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Yeah, that's not good for them, but nobody's surprised by that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about like the Uber and Lyft? Obviously, rideshare has become like kind of every day in the big cities for a lot of people. Do your friends use it like every day?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, tremendously. Yeah, like it's just because not a lot of people want to be cramped in a bus, especially in rush hour. They rather like if they're gonna take the rush hour, they'll take it in their own personal Uber with space, nice air conditioning.
Okay, that was my next question because bus ridership here in Chicago has been plunging the last couple of years. And a lot of people said it was because people have switched over to the various rideshare companies. And so that's interesting that people are just like, no, I'm not getting on that bus. Even with the cost difference.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's a substantial cost differences. People will still overlook it just for the comfort, I guess.
Wow. Okay. What do they think about automobiles? Do they have them? Do they want to get a car? Or are they also Uber, Lyft kind of replaces them getting their own?
Honestly, from my experience with my friends, they all have cars.
Oh.
But whether it be they bought it personally or they inherited it, or it got passed down to them.
That's interesting.
It's only a handful of friends that I can say that don't have cars.
Okay, so nobody's really interested in rejecting the car culture. It sounds like of your friends. Okay,
not really, no, because I mean, like people who work like in downtown Chicago, they'll then that's when the Uber comes in, so they don't have to pay for parking, hours of parking.
Yeah. But if you're obviously in the suburbs, it's a lot harder.
If you're in the suburbs, like they'll use it when they're in their neighborhood, their suburb. But then if they work in downtown, they'll obviously take the metro, stuff like that.
What do you think about the AI cars that people think are coming? Do you really think that we will have something like that within like 5 years or 10 years?
If I had to like say, I would guess 10 years, and I don't know about 5, but 10 years. But I definitely do think it will be something that will eventually happen, especially if Uber really wants to like just cut out like all the money, because sometimes I remember I read that even depending on how short the ride is, the driver will actually get most of the money that's being paid for that particular ride. So like Uber actually is losing a lot of money on these shorter rides.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's something we'll be watching. Yeah. Obviously, everybody will be. What do you think about like the electric versus the regular combustion engine type of cars? Do your friends like try to buy electric vehicles, or it's just whatever's passed down and the cheapest?
I think it's I think for me it's still kind of like they're still leaning towards more the gas powered, the engine, normal engine car.
Yeah.
But they are all about like like Tesla's initiatives and stuff like that, and Ford and everything. They're all trying to get into that electric car market, because I feel like eventually it might be like a hard lesson learned, but I feel like eventually people will definitely start turning towards the electric car market more.
Okay. Just on a side note on the career kind of paths that your friends are taking and what the youngest millennials are looking to do, was there like a popular major or a popular area to study?
Yeah. So it was actually, I got to go to 2 graduations actually for my school. So I went to mine, which was for my school, and then I went to also like the bigger Quinlan School of Business one I went to too. And honestly, the biggest major there was marketing, I'd say, by like a lot, by like a substantial amount.
Interesting.
Sadly, like my major, economics, was one of the smallest. But
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a little more challenging, I feel, economics. Okay, so let's talk about economics. What do you and your friends think about the economy right now, and are they bullish about what they're graduating into? Do they see like a lot of opportunities there? Did they get a lot of job offers, that kind of thing?
Well, I think a lot of people realize that like we are kind of like, we did kind of just graduate into like kind of a decelerating economy.
Okay.
And
could you tell at your career office? Maybe not yet.
No.
Because that was a while ago. You guys started looking for jobs a while ago. Yeah. Okay. So, but you're thinking like it does feel like it's slowing a bit.
Slowing down a bit, yeah. But just depending how the markets react to like within the next year or so, then we'll see. But, yeah.
If we do have a stock market pullback, do you think that would encourage the youngest of the millennials to start buying more stocks, or not?
I think it would, because they would hear about it and then they would like be interested. It would read they would read more into it.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it would definitely encourage at least a decent percentage of people to do it.
Okay. It sounds like stocks aren't really in the culture of you and your friends.
No, I mean, if you like the way I thought about it before I started my my major, so when I was in high school, the biggest thing I can like remember, and as well as my people my age remember, is like you don't really know exactly why the financial crisis happened, but all you remember is the massive coverage from media of just people just walking out of their offices with their belongings in boxes.
In the box.
So that kind of left a sour taste about the stock, about Wall Street, especially in a lot of people's. And then also, so like that's kind of our coming of age. So like for my group, at least, we were like 10, 11.
Yeah.
So you don't know the severity of things, but you know the surface of it.
Yeah.
But you still remember that. It's still you carry that on with you. So
right,
like
for sure.
So that's why a lot of people don't really favor Wall Street or stuff like that.
Okay. What about real estate then? Because a lot of, people lost their homes to foreclosure and all of that also when you were a kid.
Yeah.
But is that looked upon favorably? Does how do they feel about ultimately buying a house or a condo?
Yeah. I feel like definitely people do eventually want to own a house, but not immediately, not coming out of college and taking on a mortgage. Because we are facing, record levels of student debt.
Right.
So yeah. But yeah, I feel like it's definitely still the American dream, but it's kind of like a delayed dream. Like we still have it, but all these other debts and payments that we have to do right before also kind of deters us away from going towards it.
What do you think about the shopping mall? Do you and your friends go to any of them anymore? Or is everything online? Do you just shop online now?
I personally still really like going to malls, but from looking at other people, I feel like they definitely prefer just sitting on their laptop and just getting what they want.
Okay.
And even the mall, you get to try on the clothes. There's a lot of websites where they just mail you clothes. You keep what you want and send back what you don't. So yeah, e-commerce is definitely
yeah, it must be big.
Yeah.
What about the delivery services with you and your friends? Do you, partake of the Grubhub and the Postmates and Uber Eats? How do you determine which one to use? Is it simply, this restaurant uses Uber Eats, so that's what I use?
For me personally, I have most of the delivery apps, so I will just go if a restaurant is on multiple platforms, I'll just go with the lowest delivery price, obviously.
Okay, right.
But some restaurants are exclusive to one service and to another. So it really just depends. Depends if what restaurant I'm looking for. If it's too just things like that.
Okay, so really, it's about the price, obviously, and it doesn't really matter the name behind it because they all do the same thing.
They're all doing the same thing.
Yeah.
It just depends who can get the that restaurant that everyone really wants, or get it at that lower price that will be able to
Yeah. Okay. What about the streaming services then? Do you and your friends have cable at all, or do you just stream everything like Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime?
I think people my age are definitely steering away from cable packages and stuff like that. I think they are because just one payment alone, which is Netflix, that's one streaming service you can have for 10, 12, $15 a month, and you get a overwhelming amount of content that you can just watch for hours on end, and not even have to flip through channels or pay outrageous.
Right. What do you think about the Disney streaming that's going to be coming? Do you feel like that will be a competitor for these others? Do you and your friends feel the need, because you just said that even one of them has a lot of content, do you feel the need to subscribe to more than one of these streaming services? Because they do offer different things. Obviously.
In college it was you got I remember you got Amazon Prime for a deal for a certain amount of 6 months, I think you got it for. And so I had that then.
Okay.
And I think most people just go with whatever deal is going on. I remember a lot of people had Hulu for the Bears season because Hulu was offering streaming. They were streaming all the Bears games, so they had Hulu for that. That prolonged period of time. Yeah.
Do you tend to subscribe, then unsubscribe, and then subscribe again?
I personally do, yeah.
I've noticed that with various other millennials too. And that's a little bit different kind of behavior than I feel like some of the Gen X or the baby boomers.
I feel like it stems from I feel like a lot of millennials definitely don't like being committed to one certain thing. They really do, even though they say variety is actually not always a good thing. Having a lot of choices actually makes it harder to choose one. But that's why I feel like we're in a sharing economy almost. We're ride sharing, apartment rentals are skyrocketing, things like that.
Yeah. Have you ever used Airbnb or any of those types? Speaking of sharing,
I haven't, but most people who do go on spring break, that's usually what they use.
Okay. Yeah. That possibly maybe going IPO and some future date. It's one of the big ones that we're all waiting on. Okay, like we've covered a lot here. I can't really think of anything else because we did the pot, we did the cryptos, we did social media, delivery, ride shares. What about like Spotify or like the music streaming? Is everybody on Spotify that you know, or are they on like?
It's I think Apple Music might be a little bit more popular than Spotify. I'm not totally sure.
Yeah.
Though, but just from screenshots on Twitter and stuff like that, I think Apple Music is definitely getting up there. It might even surpass Spotify. But I've had Spotify since like mid high school, so I've stayed like just loyal to it because it does do the same thing. There's no point of just switching when just starting a whole new library for me, at least in my case. But Apple Music has definitely really gotten a really good share of the market recently.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I guess I covered most of my questions because I did want to know about like, the car thing and some of these other things with the eSports. And so it sounds like to me that the youngest millennials, at least you and your friends, Chris, are maybe a little more on the conservative side. Like you don't, because, the stock market's been kind of roaring here for a number of years, but none of you, and rightly so, I wasn't all that anxious to jump in when I was just getting out of college myself. I don't remember. It was a little bit later when I started to really buy stocks, but it was harder for us because we did not have online trading yet until the dot-com boom. But, it took the dot-com boom to really get older investors to be excited about the stock market. But it sounds like you guys are just a little bit more conservative, not in a bad way, but that you were kind of formulated your ideas about finance and things based on when you were a kid and saw the Great Recession. So what do you think that will mean for the youngest, you guys who are the youngest of the millennials going forward, or even the oldest of the Gen Zs, I guess, because you're basically the same. What do you think that will mean for, your investing going forward and like, even for your retirement, 401k investing and all of that? And I know your generation has the student debt issue too, but just want to kind of know your thoughts on what you think, that may lead to for you guys.
I think there'll definitely be sort of a savings, like I guess like.
Do you think people will be more into cash than anything else?
Yeah, I think people are definitely going to lean more towards cash investments than but like this is kind of like, because I definitely don't see my generation looking into long-term investments, because I feel like my generation is definitely like the generation of immediate gratification. Like they want to invest, they want to see returns like very, very soon. Like they're not into like.
So they'd be more traders than investors.
Yeah. Okay. Because like they just do like the idea of like, if I'm going to put money here now, no one really likes the idea of like just letting it be there for decades on end.
Okay.
Not even.
Well, that makes sense if they're not even going to subscribe to a streaming service for more than 3 months. Why would they like buy a stock for more than 3 months? But that will be interesting going forward to see if that does develop that way. Because again, like we said, everybody is shaped by the experiences that they have and what's going on in the economy and with the stock market at the time that you get some money where you can invest. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So that'll be interesting, I think, going forward. Any last thoughts before we wrap it up? No?
No.
This is a good discussion. And so I appreciate you sharing, kind of like what you and your friends are thinking out there, because it does change every year, and we'll see where the stock market goes from here. But so far, every time I've had summer interns on, the stock market's been doing pretty good. Yeah. Almost all those years, or at least is about to rebound into something pretty good. So so far, we haven't had anybody on having to talk about a bear stock market while I've been doing these shows, which is about 4 years now. So we will see going forward. But okay, so we talked about a lot of different stocks on this episode. And so I just want to go through some tickers for people. If you're listening and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that idea, I might want to go take a look at that stock. So there was, we'll start with the social media, Twitter, TWTR. That's a good news for them that you guys are kind of turning to Twitter for your news, actually. So just a hint there if you're thinking that Twitter could be kind of up and coming here. Instagram is owned by Facebook. Some people don't realize that, but you can buy that stock for Facebook, FB. We talked a little bit about Beyond Meat and like the plant-based food. That could be a big, well, we know it's already kind of a big trend and it's gaining some steam. BYND is that ticker. You can't buy the cryptos or the Bitcoins on the stock market yet, though. So I'm going to leave those off. There are ways to do blockchain and some other stuff to get exposure to what's going on there, but we didn't really get into that, so I'm not going to mention that. We did talk about like Amazon with Amazon Prime, AMZN. There's Netflix, NFLX. We talked a little bit about gaming. GameStop is GME, but they might not survive. We don't know, especially if you start getting more streaming in the gaming. And then we had Uber when we were talking about both the rideshare and Uber Eats. That's UBER. Grubhub is Grub, GRUB. Spotify, SPOT. We talked about Apple Music, AAPL. And I think that's about it. There was some car stuff, but we didn't really get into the actual companies with that. So yeah, these are all like the big popular names. And so if you're interested in kind of what's going to be going on with the youngest of the millennials or the oldest of the Gen Zs, you might want to take a look at some of these companies because they're the ones that the products are being used by this group, and they will have big influence going forward, especially the size of the millennial generation, bigger than the baby boomers. Okay, so if you want to get all of our podcasts, you need to subscribe because I got a few more interns here at Zacks that I'm going to be having on too. Probably going to take a little bit different conversation with some of them. Some are Gen Zs, so we might get into some of that and what's going on with them. But be sure to get us somewhere. We are on Apple Podcasts, speaking of Apple, and you can also get us on SoundCloud, and we are on Spotify too, if you are on that and want to subscribe. I know a lot of you are getting us now on Spotify, so thanks for finding us there, but get us somewhere so you don't miss a single episode, and I'll be back again next week with some more stocks.